As Hershey was looking at getting into this space, first thing we acknowledged was partnerships will be absolutely critical. We knew we wanted to make an investment into Africa, specifically Ghana, which is we've been sourcing cocoa from there for many, many years and have been investing into that country. We really wanted to step change that. So the first step we've made is something we've announced this morning, is a partnership with a nonprofit called Project Peanut Butter, who makes ready-to-use therapeutic food in Africa. But what they specialize in, these are localized solutions. So you're talking local raw materials manufactured locally to be used in that particular country. And if we had just done that, it would sound a lot like, and Jeff from Amway was talking about this today, it would sound like philanthropy. And it's a great story. I mean, you're helping to save kids suffering from severe acute malnutrition. But why this is a critically important partnership for us is the other half of the equation. So we have to have line of sight to commercially, how can this benefit shareholders for us? So what have we talked about? We're talking about local sourcing of raw materials, learning how to operate manufacturing in Africa, learning how to distribute products in Africa. And those are things that we recognized we wanted to learn. So it was an absolutely great partnership for us because we're doing a lot of social good, but we're going to be able to learn a lot from this partner. So as we develop our plans even further, again, to fill in that commercial end of it that can help be the drive engine of more social investment, it's going to be a fantastic partnership for us.
Okay. And can you say a little bit more actually about the partnership and what's it going to actually mean on the ground?
Absolutely.
In terms
on
of
the ground, what Project Peanut Butter excels at is opening this factory and running it with local folks and getting local peanuts very quickly. We're talking from start to finish, we should be producing RUTF within 18 months. So the Hershey company is fully funding this factory from its production all the way through the initial capital to get them up and running. And from that standpoint, they will be self-sufficient from that point on.
Okay. And are you aware, without putting you on the spot, I mean, how many other sort of similar factories they have like that? Because it sort of seems a good example of where a company is using its technical expertise, but not in a purely commercial way to start with.
Absolutely. Project Peanut has 3 other factories. Their initial one was in Malawi. They've also done one in Sierra Leone. And they had one in Mali that was ready to go up and running. With some current instability, they've had to put that on hold. So it was a partner who, again, had the experience and had displayed they knew how to operate. They just need the initial funding and then some of the technical expertise from a nutrition standpoint, operations that we can bring to get that factory opened even faster than what they've been able to do in the past.
And they've done their other factories with other companies?
Correct. Typically, they'll go to lots of donors and collect over a period of extended years to get the initial capital, and then go back out to a host of companies to get the technical expertise to collect it all. So what we've said is this is going to be, from their standpoint, one-stop shopping. We're going to, from the beginning, initial seed money, all the way through implementation to get them up and running. We will take care of everything for them.
Okay. And so this particular partnership is just Hershey and Project Peanut Butter, or is USAID coming in? I mean, how are you... do you need to get others involved?
No, it's been something that we've been able to do internally. Yeah. And take care of. A lot of that was fortuitous as I met Dr. Maneri at a conference, and I was talking about what we wanted to do. He was talking about what he wanted to do. And we started talking, sort of something like this. We started talking in the hallway, and things progressed from there. And for what they needed and the time frames that we wanted, it just made sense to just keep this internal. Now, folks like Gain have helped as we've been on the ground trying to look for places to put the factory and things like that. But from a funding standpoint, we kept this extremely self-contained because it just seemed like the right thing to do for this part of the initiative.
Yeah, great. And I think it raises one of the interesting tensions on partnerships, and that more partners isn't necessarily better. And so coming back, some of us who were in the impact measurement session, being very, very clear on what it is you want to achieve, and remembering that a partnership is just a tool to get there.
Absolutely.
And, having more partners can sometimes be more complex than...
Absolutely. And as we look long term, where's the commercial end going? We don't know yet. I mean, there'll be a lot of learning along, but if I could see, you talk about peanut growing and peanut development or whatever crop we would choose that we need. That's where I think you would look at, okay, we talked about this in some of the breakout sessions, a whole host of partners from expertise and from funding to invest in those smallhold farmers to create a cooperative or what have you around a particular crop to fund Dr. Maneri and something that the Hershey Company may do, you know, in 10 years or something like that.
So again, it's not just processing and fortification, it's the smallholder farmer growing the peanuts locally.
Absolutely. I think you have to. You have to be making those investments, not just in manufacturing, but also raw materials, because that impacts, you know, a factory can only employ so many people. But if you think about sourcing everything locally, I mean, that has a multiplier and a ripple effect throughout the economy.
Great. No, great. Thank you. That's sort of a good sort of framework to get us going. And before coming to you, Charlotte, I'd actually like to just speak, Yasuhiko-san and Sam, on your partnership, because you're both sort of working together. So yours is an interesting example of a sort of business-to-business partnership, but also with donors. And I don't know, your son, if you want to sort of say something initially about what you're doing in Ghana, and then Sam, you can talk about how, as an indigenous business partner, you've come to the table to scale up impact.
So we have a project in Ghana to improve nutrition of children, targeting 6 to 24 months, which is a 1,000 days target. And we have a broad range of partnership. And for the production, we have a partnership with Yedent and also DSM. And I think first about the production, the partnership with a local company like Yedent is quite important, because we can create value together, and also we can transfer technology from us. So it is a kind of win-win situation for us and also Yedent. So we just started this production this year, and we are in the stage of conducting some studies on the nutritional study and also delivery distribution model studies, in which GAIN take part in the M&E, monitoring and evaluation of these studies. So we have quite wide range of partnership, and sometimes I feel it's a bit too many. But getting expertise from many partners is quite important for our project, actually.
And can you say a little bit more before I come to Sam on both the technology transfer, but also how you're working with the Japanese aid agency, and I think with USAID, how are you bringing in non-business partners to build your joint business model?
So right now, this year actually, we concluded MOU among USAID, JICA, and Ajinomoto, which is actually first case of Japanese company to have a collaboration with USAID in GDA scheme. And the key issue was that our target was to improve the nutrition of children from 6 to 24 months, which is exactly the same. We can share the same goal with these aid agency like USAID or JICA. So that's why we can have a good collaboration. And for us, for example, USAID's interest is to establish a sustainable business model, which includes distribution model. It is really helpful for us because our goal is anyhow to establish business model, sustainable business model. And to get expertise from USAID, it's also very helpful.
Great. And one final question before coming to Sam. How did you, decide to work with Sam and Yedent Agro? You decided you needed a local partner. How did that work?
For us? Actually, when we tried to select the local partner for this project, one factor is that local partner should understand our objective. That means to establish social business. And this Yedent has experience of working with GAIN and the World Food Program. So they understand what is our goal. And also they are very keen to introduce new idea, new concept, new technology. So that is a very important factor in selecting the local partner.
Great. So I think it's a very important question of clear alignment of objectives and goals between the different partners, even if your motivations are different. You've got the same goals. Great. Now, I'll come back to you just now, but Yasu, but if I could just move to you, Samuel, and if you could just tell us a bit about Yedent Agro and how you are partnering with both foreign companies, with foreign donors, because I think you represent, so many people today have spoken about the importance of mid-size indigenous businesses which are led by local leaders, by local business leaders that are hiring local people, and you really epitomize that type of business. So could you talk a little bit about your model and then how you came to partner?
Okay, thank you. I think for me, there are three critical success for partners and partnerships to succeed. And those critical success should be ingredients that should be found. The first and foremost is aligning the spirit and chemistry of partners. I mean, by the spirit, I mean the vision, the mission, and the strategies. Then, by the chemistry, I mean the structure of the various partners. Once there is an alignment of this, it provides a very smooth platform on which partners can stand. The second critical success factor that I see for partnerships to succeed take its strength from the first one. Once visions and strategies are aligned, it allows you to draw or design a project with a sustainable business model. For instance, in the morning, a panelist did say that you can produce and donors will buy. Tomorrow, when the donors are no more, do you have a sustainable business? No. So how do we create projects that will be sustainable? And are partners willing to go through all those challenges to create a market-based, sustainable business model? So designing project models based on social marketing principles that will cause that partnership to be sustained beyond donor giving and beyond grants. It's the second success factor. And the third success factor that I think that is very important that partnerships should always look at, it's value chain efficiency. Because unlike pure commercial businesses where products are priced after manufacturing cost and input and everything, you take the price to the consumer. But for social marketing businesses, you have to go to the consumer and take the price that he's willing to buy. That is the price PowerPoint, and bring it back and ask yourself, how can I manufacture my product to meet the expectation of the base of the pyramid consumer? And before you can do that, you have to clearly identify your value chain and how you can efficiently play along the value chain. From the farmer, quality, transport, and I mean the pure value chain. Once these three things are done and the project take off, then you can come back and look at your project measurements, your success, the outcomes, and the impact, and how you can scale this up. And once partners that are involved are like-minded in thinking, then we gear towards a goal. But if a partner comes in with all the resources, with all the good intentions, with everything, and the partner that he's partnering is a 1 year, 2 year profit-thinking person whose chemistry is not social business, social thinking, but really going in for profit, it makes the relationship of the marriage might not grow. So for me, these are 4 critical things, success factors needed for partnerships to thrive and to be sustained.
I think a very, very good and a universal framework, whether we're talking about nutrition or other types of partnership. And building on your question of making the value chain efficient, how have you done that in this case? Because there's the immediate sort of processing and manufacturing that your business is able to do. But as you say, you're part of a value chain in Africa where there's smallholder farmers who don't have support, where there's transportation problems. So have you sort of selected different partners at each level of the value chain to make it more different? I mean, who's coordinating the overall value chain? Is that yourself?
Yes, ourselves. What we've tried to do, our basic raw materials we use now are primarily maize and soybean. So we have aggregators who aggregate from the farmers. And because we've had a discussion with them as to quality and all those things, they are able to aggregate. Then it's transported to the factory and we manufacture. But beyond the aggregation, what we've again tried to do is commercial farming is gradually springing up. So we again have identified 1 or 2 commercial farmers who we also deal with.
Great, excellent. So, and it comes back to Pierre's point earlier about how you help smallholder farmers to organize, whether it's through a cooperative or an aggregator. And who are you also looking at the nutrition of those smallholder farmers, given some of our other conversations today, that they're not just producing input for your factory, but
yes,
they have their own nutrition challenges?
As at now, we leverage synergies with some development partners.
Great.
Like TechnoServe, there are TechnoServe, and there is one other organization who, once we've been able to put our farmers together, they also come in, give them training, and take it from there.
Great, excellent. So again, I think it sort of captures this sort of almost like one of those Russian dolls where you need a partnership with a partnership around it, and that you need to make your own business model work, and you need it to be sustainable commercially. But to make the whole value chain work, or the system, you probably do need ongoing donor funding and NGOs and technical assistance. So you and Ajinomoto can make your own business work, but that broader system, you need that ongoing support. So it's not just one partnership, it's a multitude of partnerships. Yeah, great. And then very quickly before I come to you, Charlotte, Yasu, can you also say something about this technology cooperation? Because it seems to me that's one of the other great opportunities for multinational companies working with domestic local partners. And Andreas, you mentioned it as well. How are you genuinely transferring technology to your local partner and spreading world-class technology?
Yeah, actually, we ask our food engineers, especially young engineers, to come to Ghana and discuss with the partners. And so this is a kind of process of what we call co-creation. And this is really the exciting experience for our young engineers to have a good discussion with Yedent and think about the best way to introduce our technology, our know-how for food production and quality control. So it's a kind of collaborative process to create this production facility.
Great, fantastic. Well, thank you. So I think 2 very interesting models, sort of similar in some ways, but a sort of a multinational company with an NGO, in the case of Hershey and Project Peanut, but very much trying to build a long-term model. And in your case, Ajinomoto and Yedent Agro working together and supported in strengthening the value chain by USAID, by JICA, by TechnoServe, and so helping not only your own partnership but the business ecosystem to work better. So I think two very interesting sort of more project-based partnerships. And Charlotte, I'd like to come to you now, and if you could just say something a little bit about the Amsterdam Initiative Against Malnutrition, which has brought sort of a group of companies together with government, with academics, to try and address, I think, some of the system challenges that we face to building these innovative business models.
Yeah, so I'm the coordinator of the Amsterdam Initiative Against Malnutrition. As it says, we are based in Amsterdam, and we work a lot with Dutch organizations, companies, and also NGOs and civil society, and Wageningen University, which is a very specialized agriculture university. So Amsterdam Initiative started out initially with three private sector partners, which were Unilever, DSM, and AkzoNobel, and very much focused initially on the processing step. Adding some iron from AkzoNobel with the vitamins from DSM in a Unilever product, so to say, and then go to market there. But I think we found the learnings where it was a little bit difficult to make it take off because we were focusing, I think, too narrowly on one part of the value chain. And if one sort of idea maybe didn't get the momentum within one of those three companies, it sort of stopped. So we thought, okay, let's see if we could also complement this partnership and looking upstream in the value chain and downstream. Also looking indeed on the sourcing part. Also looking beyond the processing food. And also downstream into the retail and really how do we actually reach the consumer with these nutritious solutions that we have. So now we have also got partners upstream, so we are engaged with also a Dutch-based vegetable seed company. We have also some companies in dairy. We are working with a Dutch-Nigerian-based organization company that do cassava processing. So cassava is, of course, also a poor man's for the base of the pyramid, but non-nutritious, so also a good way to look for fortification possibilities. And we look also downstream, so we work with Spar, which is a retailer, very strong also in Africa, and I also have some interesting concepts in the rural areas. And then we also work together with Rabobank Foundation, because I think another important and aspect is also access to finance. So we try and look and have now identified a whole group of initiatives where these partners work in different constellations. So DSM could be part of 5 of the 12, or Akzo maybe in 3, and so forth. And together we have then looked at the more systemic barriers to entry along the value chain, again starting with the demand. So really also with all the focus and where we try to start all of the initiatives is around the demand and creation of aspirational products. So really having a messaging, what Marty also talked about, the wants, and try to understand the wants of the base of the pyramid. And then go up with the chain. So definitely when we have this portfolio of vegetable-based, milk-based, micronutrient powders in itself, we will try to design the program that we do not come with one awareness campaign around micronutrients, but the more holistic also around nutrition, and there are various solutions for various situations to fill the malnutrition gap. And then we have looked at other barriers to interest, like the quality assurance and control, and if it's maize-based, also, for example, peanut aflatoxin issues. So in our portfolio, we have also now a project where we, with a local lab, work to build capacity, and they will get trained within the labs of AkzoNobel and DSM. So locally, the control and assurance can be taken place, and this lab will sort of serve the regional demand that will be for quality control and assurance. So that's another sort of more systemic problem we're trying to solve. And one important part on that I haven't mentioned is the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So they fund us, and they support the secretariat, so really playing this brokering role and trying to build the partners together. And what we have done together is also really look for these opportunities and see where is it actually that and ideas to solve these barriers. And I think what we then sort of use the donor money to is not going. We are not giving money to Unilever, or that's not money they are missing. So what they sort of put into the partnership is their knowledge and their commitment and their sort of in-kind contribution. Mm-hmm. So that's much more worth than the private sector donating money, I think. So to really have a group of people that are put on the projects with dedicated hours and time to try to make this work. And then the Dutch have also a very special, I think, quite novel view. They don't consider donorship as development aid, but development investment.
Exactly.
So what they say is we are willing to invest in this space, but we do it on a matching basis. So if we can get commitment from the organizations we work with, private, but also NGO, if they have funding from other resources, then we match that. And that kind of resources we then get, we can use to invest to take away some of these barriers to interest together. So we have a consorted actions around demand creation, around quality assurance, around policy and advocacy. So that is the way we try and make this work together. And it's not so that you need to show your Dutch passport to be a member. So it's not chauvinistic in that way. And I mean, not even Dutch. So, but it does help a bit that you have sort of the same cultural background.
Yeah. Chemistry, as Sam was saying.
Yeah, exactly. I fully agree with you. And the lines are, and also a lot of these organizations are each other's suppliers and customers, so that also helps. So that and also what we try and do, we try to proactively keep the whole partnership together in the sense that we organize virtual meetings. And at least twice a year we come together and share some experiences. And there you also see there is a lot of extra indirect value there, because the retailer SPAR suddenly starts talking to DSM about, we heard Osvaldo talk about the Cabal case. Oh, but how does your franchising model, because SPAR is also kind of a cooperative, a franchising model. So there's a lot of cross-learning that is never captured, I think, anywhere, but it's just used because we have this opportunity to be more tied together than doing sort of 10 projects individually.
Yeah. No. And I mean, I personally think it's one of the most interesting models I'm aware of, and I'm surprised that it hasn't, been copied elsewhere. Like, with the Japanese, could one see JICA working with 5 Japanese companies, including a bank, including food companies, and including retail companies, or the same with USAID and a group of US companies. And I don't know do you get visits from other donor agencies? Because it was the Dutch government and GAIN who helped to get the whole thing going with leadership from the companies. But it seems an interesting model.
I think so. I think in the UK, they are, like we also heard this morning, they are interested in some commitment to try to set them up. And I, being Scandinavian, I know I also just talked again to one people start hearing about it and are very quite interested in trying. So also there are some interest around some various organizations trying to do.
Do you think that might be something that could work in Japan?
Actually, when we talk about our project, actually many of Japanese companies, not just food company, but other companies are interested in this kind of project, and there's a possibility to have such collaboration.
So it might be an interesting way to sort of mobilize and leverage more resources than otherwise might be the case. So, well, thank you. I'd like to sort of open up now. We don't have a lot of time, but any comments on this sort of question of how we sort of use partnerships either to make sort of business models and value chains work more effectively, or to sort of address some of the more sort of systemic challenges. So any sort of questions or comments? So we've got one over there and one down here. So why don't we take those two to start with? And if you can introduce yourself, because I'm as blind as a bat and I can't see.
Okay, I don't think you know me. But I'm Martin Gallagher. I'm from the Scaling Up Nutrition Secretariat in Geneva. And I just wondered about the role of national governments in partnerships and how the partnerships that you're involved in align with governments' priorities and their objectives in terms of reducing undernutrition within their populations. Thank you.
Very, very important role. So, role of national governments at the country level. And Andreas, do you want to? Here we go.
Just a quick one. We were also approached by the Japanese Ministry of Industry and shared our SAFO experience, and I was really surprised to see a complete book where SAFO and my name was in there, and I didn't understand the word because it was all in Japanese. But thanks for the copy we sent over then. I just want to bounce back the question on the governance and the operational steering of multi-stakeholder partnerships of that complexity. I mean, complementarity still might be a common wisdom, and maybe also identifying areas where you have a sole or shared responsibility to not coordinate everything. But Jane, why don't you give us an idea about the 3 principles of how to manage that?
How to manage the governance and accountability aspects. Great, I'll do that. Well, let's start with the role of national government in sort of each of your partnerships. Do you want to go?
Actually, in our project, the involvement of Ghanaian government is quite important, and especially the Ghana Health Service, which is under Ministry of Health in Ghana. And actually, it took some period of time to reach consensus or to reach signing MOU with Ghana Health Service, because basically they were saying that they are not ready to have a collaboration with private company. But after we explained our main objective as improving nutrition of children aged 6 to 24 months, we could finally reach agreement that they can participate in this project. So their involvement is quite important.
Yeah. And Sam, do you want to add to that? I mean, the role of the government, the national government in Ghana?
Yes, I think, like Dr. Toride just said, government and the public sector are used to receiving funding, donor funding, they directing what they have to do with it. And they see private sector as not easily like people with different objectives, but what they fail to realize is that we are all working towards a public goal. So initially, like the Ghana Health Service, if a private sector have all this good thinking and want to come in and he said, no, I don't have anything to do with private sector, it tells the orientation of the public sector and of government. And it then dawned on us as private sectors that when such opportunities are gotten with public-private partnership, we have to ensure success. Once we can prove success, then we can go back to government and say that this which you initially objected, these are the impact and these are the outcomes. Then it can be replicated, because the fact of the matter is that the public sector or the government in Ghana does not come readily to partnerships and policies that will really gear towards serious private sector participation in nutrition delivery.
Yeah. And so this is where potentially GAIN can play a role, and the donor agencies can play a role, and the UN and the World Bank in working with national governments. And I think that, coming back to scaling up nutrition, I think is a good example of where, you know, the sort of the government network of scaling up nutrition and the donor network, you know, can really work to build the capacity of national governments to both negotiate in a way that they can ensure that there aren't negative impacts of the private sector getting more involved, but at the same time incentivize
especially when it comes to the issue of nutrition.
Yeah. Because
markups and margins are not as huge. Mm-hmm. So if already there are not much incentive for the private sector to go that way. So if the private sector is driven by a mission and there are those obstacles, all that it does is back up, reinvest elsewhere, get your bigger margins, and move on. Yeah. The only thing that will cause the private sector to still stay and persist is its zeal to ensure that it contributes towards malnutrition resolution.
And there's not enough companies doing that. So
there's not much companies that have that zeal.
No. So I think it comes back, it's a theme that's come out again and again today, that you need public policy and regulation to protect consumers and minimize bad practices, but at the same time, they also need to create incentives for business to do these base of the pyramid models, and that sort of requires a fair amount of capacity. Charlotte, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I want to say, because there's also a good example where there is very good collaboration. We can mention Kenya, where the Ministry of Health and Sanitation, have a very visionary view on where they want to develop the nation, and nutrition and fortification is an integrated part there, and they recognize that it is of the public good, and also I think they if they want to deliver out micronutrient powders, we had a talk today at lunch, that they don't produce them themselves. They need private sector to do that, and but to be able to purchase that for the whole nation is not durable. So they are also very interesting that the commercial market for these types of products can be developed. And also, I think, are very open to also look at how they could try and lower the barriers, for example, to handle the affordability issues. We can talk about regulation on tax on micronutrients, for example. So I think I think we should also take those examples where it really works, and then I'll show them as good examples, maybe for countries where that are not come so far.
Yeah. And do you think the national fortification alliances have helped in sort of countries to make this type of thing work? Because they seem to me, again, a model that we need to keep investing in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
At the country
and
level.
I think the GAIN country offices can be very helpful for all of you to really connect, because they really understand.
For Ghana, the mass fortification projects, which have been successful, flour, oil, iodization, has been pioneered by public leadership. For instance, GAIN came in the recently successful project of the flour fortification. GAIN has to push through and ensure that the flour mills come on board. Same with oil. So governments are amenable to hearing the voice of such public organizations.
Yeah. So again, and governments are absolutely essential to scaling up.
Yes.
And that's And so it's building their capacity and working with them. Jeff, do you have any comments on national government?
Well, the only observation I would make is the issues you're describing are not limited to Ghana. We bumped into the same things as we've been getting into this space from dealing with U.S. government and U.S. government entities. One thing we learned, I mentioned this in the first breakout session, is business has a way of thinking and operating and speaking, and we've learned very quickly that the rest of the world doesn't think that way sometimes. So as I think about where we need help, it would be for places like GAIN to be that bridge and that translator to help us deal with these, or not deal with, or work with these entities to get that first win. And it would be much easier once you get past that, but I think we struggle with how to even get started and how to navigate. And that's definitely the help and where Gain's been helping us thus far that we look forward to in the future.
Great. And any other thoughts from you before I wrap up and answer the question on governance, either on governance or on the role of Gain in helping to build either individual business model partnerships or these broader sort of system level partnerships?
Actually, in our project, Gain plays an important role in establishing monitoring and evaluation for distribution model study. And we compare two systems. One is community-based distribution system. Another one is using the traditional market channel with social marketing activity. So, but the key issue is that we want to evaluate these two systems by using the same methodology which was provided by Gain. By doing so, we can create best practice for the distribution system. We are hoping that, yeah.
So sort of a very important technical assistance as well as brokering different partners. So, yep. Sam, any particular role that Gain play?
I think Gain, in the morning session, I heard somebody saying it, and I want to reiterate it, that Gain should be encouraged not to get cold feet with businesses that are going through the market model, because getting reach at base of the pyramid is a challenge. And as we learn from Vietnam through Jakarta, you have to craft a marketing model that suits the socio-cultural environment. So most of these marketing models that businesses are crafting to resolve based on the pyramid marketing models are learning curves. So sometimes the outcomes and the impact might not be delivered within the expected time frame, but there might some lessons that will be learned. So when outcomes and impacts are not delivered within time frames, I urge Gain to have patience and learn along the line so that we can get there together.
And this, going back to your earlier point, your sort of second point of successful partnerships, you've got to have a sustainable model. But I think we're all realizing that actually to reach those sustainable models is taking longer than a lot of people thought.
Yes.
And it's you know, having that long-term commitment is probably a fourth critical thing of partnership. Charlotte, any sort of closing comments from you on the role of Gain?
I think definitely the brokering role is very, very essential, but also being the place for sharing learning and capturing the learning. And also in the session I had Foko also mentioned that we should also in the community agree on what we do not agree on around the evidence that is already there. So because there's much more than, I think, also within all of these partners here, to make sure that everybody knows that, and then also agree on what we do not agree on, so that we can try and get evidence for that, but structure that a little bit better.
Yeah, great. Any closing comment from you, Jeff?
No.
Thank you. I think finally sort of a few closing comments from me on your question on governance, Andreas. I think it's obviously a very broad question, but I think to me, sort of three of the critical things on governance, particularly if it's a multi-stakeholder, so you've got 20, 30 partners, and I think Gain is, very, very good example, is that first of all, your governance structure has to more or less represent, the different, not necessarily every single stakeholder, but the different stakeholder groups. And I think the Scaling Up Nutrition governance structure is a good example of that as well. So I think your governance structure needs to be representative of the stakeholders, point number one. I think point number two, having an external technical or partnership advisory board, particularly for the complicated partnerships, is very important, both in terms of being a technical sounding board or advisory board, but also giving added legitimacy to the particularly if that board is, respected academics and sort of independent people. And then thirdly, and it comes back to the session on impact measurement, I think, good governance is also, and Sam's point about having a clear vision of what you want to achieve, and then, your clear indicators to me is a critical element of good governance. And a critical indicator in the space that we're talking about is how is the voices of the poor or the voices of the consumers actually fed back into the measurements, but also then into the governance deliberations and decision making. So I think it's sort of an element of the representation nature, the sort of external independent advisory, technical advisory groups, and then thirdly sort of clear indicators including some type of mechanism through surveys or whatever other way, the end consumer and the beneficiaries, whether they're smallholder farmers or low-income consumers, gets fed back into governance deliberations. And in these days, with all the technology we have, I think that's getting easier. So sort of initial thoughts on that. And I think just to wrap up before handing over to Steve Godfrey, from my side, as sort of having moderated the day, I think there's sort of three key messages that come out of the day for me. And one is that it seems to me, after sort of many years of sitting in these discussions, that our common goal is more clear than it's probably ever been in terms of what's needed. And I think where GAIN is sort of going with its own strategy of continuing massive and sort of large-scale food fortification programs, number one, but then secondly being very targeted on the first 1,000 days, is sort of very exciting because it seems the whole community has come around that, not just through the 1,000-day campaign, but recognizing that that's where we can make some very, very important interventions. But then thirdly, recognizing, as you said, Sam, and you alluded to, Jeff, it's a whole value chain challenge. And this idea of looking not only at the end of the value chain on processing and manufacturing and distribution, but also agriculture and the inputs, and understanding what we need to do along that value chain, I think is very clear. So it seems to me that those sort of three strategic goals are clearer than I've certainly ever heard them in this community, and very exciting for business to get around all three of those goals. I think secondly, it is so clear now than where we are now from where we were even a few years ago, that business has a crucial role to play, and that it's not only the big multinational companies, but it's also the Agros of this world, Yedent Agros, and the domestic companies and the small and medium-sized companies in country, and working with sort of business associations in country at the national level, I think is going to be very, very important going forward. And so that sort of recognition that business is so important, but not just the multinationals, and also not just the food and agribusiness companies, but the banks, the information technology companies, and increasingly retail companies, advertising companies. I think the potential to get other industry sectors engaged at the country level on the sort of the nutrition sort of value chain and debate is high. So I think enormous potential to bring more companies to the table. And then third and finally, it seems to me that there's sort of at least 5 major areas where business can partner with other actors or with other businesses to play a very important role. And I think first and foremost, it is through the core business, as we've sort of discussed again and again today, regardless of what the core business is. It's, how is, particularly if it's a food company or an agribusiness company, how are you, developing your business model and your value chain, whether it's giving inputs into agriculture or it's food processing and manufacturing or whether it's distribution. It's how can you ultimately harness the core business model, because that's going to bring about the greatest scale. But I think, Samuel, as you mentioned, and numerous people have said throughout the day, that often needs some initial support. And either you need a social business unit within the company that's sort of got different hurdle rates to the rest of the commercial business, and or you need support from the foundation in the company, and or you need to partner with a donor agency or a TechnoServe or an NGO. So, but ultimately going towards the core business is clearly the way that we're going to have the greatest scale. The second, I think, area for potential partnerships was our panel just after lunch today around brand marketing. And for the companies that are consumer-facing in the more developed economies, actually tapping into the enormous potential, I think, to engage consumers and employees around getting actively involved in both just raising awareness of the nutrition challenge, but also mobilizing resources, has great potential. And you look at the RED campaign on HIV/AIDS and the Global Fund, I think Future Fortified has the potential not only to raise awareness with consumers and employees, but also to mobilize individuals getting more engaged and making a more people-to-people connection. So I think that's a sort of second area for exciting partnerships. I think a third area is around what I'd call strategic CSR and philanthropy. There's been several questions today, and Jeff, you mentioned it as well. Is it core business or is it philanthropy? I actually don't think it should be an either-or. I think good companies are often doing both. And the best companies are using their philanthropic dollars or their foundations or their CSR dollars to seed innovative new approaches and business models, just as the example that you gave. Or they're using, and I think the great example we had from Cargill today, the Partners in Food Solutions, where they're using employee volunteering, not to go and just paint a school, but actually using the technical capabilities of employees to go to Africa or Latin America or Asia and work with local partners to do technology cooperation, share technology skills. And that might be through your employee volunteering program, which is not necessarily the core business, but it's core to your business, because those are the capabilities that your people bring to work every day and they can apply to the nutrition challenge. So I think really strategic leverage of employee volunteering, strategic philanthropy, and using that to sort of catalyze innovation in the business model is a third area where business can play a role in partnership with others. I think the fourth area is in what we heard in the panel before this one, these sort of pre-competitive alliances between companies in the same industry sector around food safety, quality assurance, potentially sort of demand, creating consumer demand, but sort of some of the system challenges which each company is dealing with and is often quite costly to deal with. I think at a country and at a global level to have pre-competitive alliances is another area, so sort of business-to-business alliances, and then working in a collective way with government around some of these systems challenges is the fourth area. And then linked to that, the fifth area of partnership are the partnerships around sort of public policy dialogue and actually working with government to strengthen the national policy environment for nutrition and for inclusive business models. And I think the role of the national fortification alliances and sort of country-level partnerships with government are another area which we can continue to develop. So I think it's those sort of business model partnerships, these sort of brand cause-related marketing partnerships, strategic corporate responsibility and philanthropy, these pre-competitive sort of industry-level alliances, and then I think at a country level, sort of national partnerships with government to improve the system have enormous potential. We've got examples of each of them, and it's how do we increase those and scale them up. But I think it's a very, very exciting time, and I want to thank the panel, thank all of you, and I'll ask Steve Godfrey to come up and wrap up the day. Thank you very much.